Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Community Awareness Program. Michelle Walter. If I could get everybody to please stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. So before we get started, I'm going to let you know we've got quite a few speakers today, and our first one is going to be Officer Rodriguez. He is from Banning Police Department, and he is the homeless liaison officer. So he's going to come and give us some stats.
Hello, everybody. Last month, for the month of April, I, as the homeless liaison officer, responded to 45 transient-related calls for service. I made 33 arrests. We had 10 homeless encampment cleanups, and we recovered 25 shopping carts. Any questions? They go to the dump here in the city, and they try to relocate them back to the businesses. They have to obviously pay a fee. They pay $15 for each of their shopping carts.
Is it getting better or worse?
We're trying to make it better. Obviously, anything goes in life. It sometimes got to get a little worse before it can get better, but we're definitely doing everything we can.
Remember, everybody, that you need to have the microphone because people is being televised on Channel 97. So please make sure you wait for the microphone.
The Opportunity Village, is it full? Is it being used on an ongoing basis? And I noticed that around our community, there's not as many encampments as there have been in the past.
Opportunity Village is being used. It is not at full capacity right now. Right now, it is a 90-day program. They're trying to utilize it to be longer than 90 days. Unfortunately, after 90 days, not everybody is ready to rehabilitate and get back into the streets. So they're trying to make it more long-term. But like anything, it takes time and a little bit of funding from the county and other things like that. As far as the encampments here around your guys' neighborhood, I try to come through here 4 or 5 times a day if I can. I get it, it's an eyesore. We pay all this money to live in this beautiful community. Last thing you want to see is the homeless loitering at your businesses, loitering in your neighborhood. So I definitely try multiple times. We try to come through here at least once a week to break up your encampments as far as cleanups. But logistically, it's not always that way. But I do try to do as much enforcement here in your guys' community as I can. You're very welcome.
Do people have to call you, or do you just come on a regular basis, once a week, once a day, or how does it work?
I come through here on a regular basis every day. So I work 4 days a week. I work Tuesday through Fridays or Monday through Thursdays, depending on the week. But I always encourage call. If you see something, call us. Okay. I'd be more than happy to come out here and do what I can.
Because there was one person at the Albertsons shopping center, and what I noticed is that he was there very quietly, standing there, and he was there like 3 days, and he was very distinctive in the way, with his shopping cart, very neat and everything. But he was there for 3 days, so I guess nobody called.
Yeah, we don't know unless you call us. Obviously, there's only so many police officers in the city. We always encourage, if you see something, call.
First of all, what's the number that you call?
You can call the Banning Police Department number with the non-emergency line, or you can call 911 if it's emergency. Let me see if I have the phone number on me.
What's your first name?
Manuel, or Manny. The non-emergency line for you to call is 951-922-3170. 951-922-3170. And obviously, if you have an emergency, call 911.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, we do.
Just
curious, has the homeless population increased or decreased or pretty much stayed the same?
It's pretty much stayed the same for the most part. We do have the occasional spike in our homeless population, being is that we have a jail in the city. So where other cities are here in the local area make an arrest, they get released from the jail and they kind of linger or loiter in our city. And I tried our very best to drive them back to wherever they came from if they're willing to go.
Any? Oh.
Do people have a right to panhandle from public property, i.e. a sidewalk, or, you know, and that's was my first thought, was if they're on a sidewalk, they kind of have a right to be there, and they have the right of free speech. On the other hand, if it's private property, like the shopping mall parking lot, should we call you if they are on a parking lot or on obviously Sun Lake's property or whatever we call
So
it?
the way it works for panhandling, it is a violation of the penal code, 555.2. But the way that kind of works is they have to be actively taking away from a business. So panhandling in front of a business is 100% you can call us. If you see them on the public sidewalk, it doesn't hurt for you to call. We can go down there and we can talk to them, ask them to move. You never know, somebody may have a warrant or have something else that we may be able to get them out of your guys' viewpoint.
How many people work with you?
I am the sole homeless liaison of the city. I do work with this young, lovely lady here in the back, Seabat. She is from the county, where she's a clinical therapist. She comes out with me once a week, and we try to offer services other than just going to jail.
When you first started talking, you talked too fast for me.
Yes, ma'am.
How many encampments did you?
We had 10 cleanups for the month.
And what was the other? Were the other statistics?
33 arrests, all transient related. The city fielded, while I was here, 45 calls for service for transient related activities. And we recovered 25 shopping carts.
Again,
No.
how many? 45?
25.
She does my article. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Roman from Securitas.
Thank you, Ms. Walters. Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant Roman. I'm filling in for Director of Security Mike Romero today. Just a few quick announcements. We are encouraging our residents to use the pedestrian gates and have a key on them to access the community for all gates. Due to safety concerns, we would hate to see someone get struck by incoming or outgoing traffic. A new fence addition can be seen at the main gate. This is to help prevent pedestrians from using the vehicle entrance as an entry point and encourage the use of the sidewalk instead. Please make sure to always use the sidewalk. Should you observe someone entering Sun Lakes who looks suspicious, please call security. We will go out as soon as we can. We'll identify them, make sure if they're supposed to be here, then we'll leave them be. If they're not supposed to be here, then we'll escort them out. We also ask that guests, residents, and all Sun Lake staff please honor the speed limits inside, as speeding has become a huge safety concern inside the community. We're receiving daily calls about people speeding through the community. We are, unfortunately, security does not have the authorization to enforce speeding regulations, but we are certainly reporting them to the safety committee. So that way, the master board can make those decisions that they need to make. With the summer season rapidly approaching, the Securitas team will have a pool monitor at the main clubhouse and the north clubhouse starting Memorial Day. We ask that residents and guests familiarize with the Sun Lakes pool regulations, as our officers will be enforcing them. Our hours are from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and will be extended to 5 p.m. on Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day weekends. To help expedite the guest registry, we ask that you please call our call center and notify us that you are expecting company. Not doing so will create traffic at the main gates, and my officers will do their due diligence in getting a hold of the residents by calling to obtain clearance. If we are not successful, we will park the guests until contact is made with the resident. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of parking at our gates, so we can only, park 1 or 2 vehicles at a time. So it's very important, and it does help us clear the line faster if everyone's called in. Please ask guests to be prepared to show the team a driver's license or ID and have the address that they are registered under ready. We have common last names in Sun Lake, so it's hard to pull an address that just matches someone based on their last name. For instance, Smith, we have over 30 Smiths. So if you tell us I'm going to go see Mr. Smith, it's going to be a little difficult for us to find which one you're looking for. Parking enforcement is frequently done throughout all hours, and patrol will issue parking violations should a resident or guest be in violation. Make sure that you or your guests have a valid passes displayed on the dashboard at all times and park only in designated areas. Passes can be obtained through our gates or the administration team should you need an extended time frame. Garage checks are still being performed between the hours of 8 p.m. and midnight only. We will call you to inform you or leave a voicemail. Security is not responsible for closing one's garage doors. We are seeing an uptick in wildlife around the community, including snakes, spiders, coyotes, bobcats, so please make sure your garage doors are closed. They do go in there, looking for scraps or somewhere to hide, and they will get stuck there, and it is a hassle trying to get them out. We ask that residents use the resident lane, have an active transponder and resident decal on their vehicle. Should you flash a gate pass, you will be asked to come through the guest lane to check in. Officers will verify a resident once a Sun Lakes ID or an address and security code is provided. We also ask that residents honor the 1 vehicle at a time and stop behind the stop line and proceed once the vehicle in front of them has cleared. This avoids damage to the vehicle should the automatic gate arm come down. Unfortunately, a lot of people have been rolling through that stop sign, and the gate arm is automatic. We don't have control over it immediately, so if a car goes by, it will come down and it'll smack the top of your car. So we're trying to prevent that as much as we can. This concludes my report today. Do you have any questions? Sure.
What's your first name?
Jonathan.
I'm sorry, does anybody have any questions?
What's the number that people would call if they see somebody coming in and they need to call you right away?
Absolutely. So that's going to be our hotline, which is the normal security number. It's going to be 951-845-2163. And once again, that's 951-845-2163.
Is a person going to answer?
Yes, absolutely. That's to all the gates. So all the gates will ring, yes. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to start with our first program, and I am going to introduce Allie Webb, and she is from the administration from San Gorgonio Hospital, and she's going to tell you guys some exciting news before she introduces our speakers. Linda, it was Allie, A-L-I, Webb, W-E-B-B.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to hear Guillermo's presentation. We've been super excited to get out as we get closer and closer to our project completion. We're just excited to be able to share some news with you guys. Really quick, just some breaking news about the hospital. You may have read it in the news. We recently just completed the Leapfrog Hospital Safety Grade Survey. And we received a safety grade of A in patient safety and quality. This is a huge, huge, huge accomplishment for our hospital, and we want to make sure that the community is aware that when it comes to patient safety and quality, you're coming to the right place. And so just wanted to, I was speaking with Michelle earlier and showed her a flyer that we just put out and was letting her know about the safety grade. And she said to make sure and announce that. So I'm super excited for you guys to hear the education on stroke with Guillermo, and I will hand it over to him. He's our stroke coordinator at the hospital, and he has worked tirelessly and just has passion and devotion to this project and to our hospital, and obviously to the patients in our community. We're so excited to be able to offer this service to you guys here in the community, and we hope we don't have to see you, but if you do have to come to the hospital, just know that, especially with this stroke program, Guillermo has thought of everything from A to Z to make sure that the quality and the safety is top-notch. So thank you guys again.
Before Guillermo comes up here, I just want to let you know, he's going to do his presentation first, then you may ask questions, okay? So don't ask any questions during his presentation. Let him finish, and then we'll have a question and answer period. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Hello. How's everybody doing? Yeah? Okay, awesome. So my name is Guillermo, and I have Soraya right here. She's actually part of the Coast Stroke team. And usually I do this by myself, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to bring somebody that is actually in the battlefield and is doing everything day to day, so that if you guys have questions, we'll be hanging out at the end over there. We have some goodies, educational content that I want to give you guys, and we can answer your questions. Anything that you might have, we can speak to in relationship to stroke. Okay? So first of all, let me just kind of get settled right here. I wanted to give you guys an update. And I came here last year. We had a health fair. I don't know who came to that health fair, but it was a lot of people. And we basically told you guys that we were embarking on a project to have your community hospital, which is San Gregorio Memorial Hospital, to be a primary stroke center. And we told you guys this, and we wanted to basically give you a summary, because the way I see it is you guys are our boss. The hospital is trying to serve its community. So I think it's important that we kind of like tell the community what's happening in relationship to their care. So the first presentation, we're going to talk about the entire stroke program and what it means and how it all fits together for the practical actual practical process of getting a stroke, which is like Soraya is part of all that. So I'm going to tell you guys everything you need to know for our project, and hopefully you guys can spread the news around the community here in this beautiful retirement community. And we're trying to go to all of them. We also go to Four Seasons, and we do events there. I've gone to the Bauman Library, and I've talked to people there. We're trying to really educate this community because strokes are a big deal. All right? So first of all, if you guys look over here, what I'm talking about is about this part, okay? So if I'm talking about something, you guys could just look over here. But we're a short-term acute care hospital, and we have a total of 79 beds, okay? That just gives you guys an idea of how big we are. We still can handle the community and the community needs. So when people show up, we're able to very basically take care of them right away and admit them depending on their needs, right? But this is some of the census information. So Banning is specifically a 23.2 square mile area, has a growing population of about 32,000 people, right? And what we're looking into is basically how do we serve our community the best way that we can. So the hospital thought about becoming a primary stroke center. And what that means is that we had to get a lot of things organized and together and develop all of these brand new initiatives to ensure that when the agencies showed up, that we have everything that we need as far as like the establishment of the hospital. So one of the things, for example, that I had to do is I had to make sure that the upper administration, which means the CEO, right, the CNO, the people that are actually making the big decisions for the hospital, I had them commit to a higher standard of care in relationship to stroke. So we have these letters that they have signed that they're giving me their commitment for anything that we might need as far as the program. So it all starts with commitment, right? And we have that from upper administration. The next thing is our stroke vision and mission statement, right? So Soraya right here is going to take the time to read to you guys what our primary stroke center's mission is. And that will just kind of give you an overall idea of where we're coming from as far as our initiatives, okay?
So our primary stroke center mission is encouraging our community through excellence in stroke care. Our mission of San Gorgonio Memorial Hospital is to provide rapid, expert, and compassionate treatment to individuals experiencing strokes. We are dedicated to employing cutting-edge technology and evidence-based practices to optimal patient outcomes while following a culture of continuous learning and innovation among our multidisciplinary team. Through collaboration, innovation, and community engagement, we seek to reduce the burden of strokes by empowering individuals to take control of their health and well-being. Together, we strive to transform stroke care, one patient at a time, with empathy, expertise, and excellence, guiding every step of our journey.
Thank you, Soraya. So that's our mission statement. That's what we're trying to do when anybody shows up in the hospital with stroke care needs. We had to do that by joining forces with the Joint Commission. The Joint Commission is a third-party governing agency, and their main purpose is to increase patient safety, right? So they offer all of these programs that hospitals can undertake to expand their services. So we are basically running the show under the guidance of these huge agencies that ensure that everything we're doing has a level of foundation that is acceptable by them. Does that make sense? So why are we doing this project? Well, if you guys look right here, this is where our hospital is, and this is our demographics, right? You guys see these big, densely colored areas? Those are all the big hospitals. So you have RCH, you have RUHS, Palm Springs, and all these hospitals, right? And these are all these big ones. But look at us. We're kind of like in the middle of nowhere, right? And there isn't any other hospitals around. And here's the crazy part. The way that the regulations are set up through the EMS agencies, right? Whenever somebody calls 911, you know how you guys were discussing that right now, like call 911? That's what we want you guys to do. And the second portion of this PowerPoint presentation is gonna be giving you guys all the resources and tools as far as stroke education so that you guys know what to do in case this ever shows up in your life or your family members or people that you know, okay? But basically, if somebody in this area, so that's a 22.3 mile square radius, right? If somebody right there that is living 3 blocks from the hospital, they're all of a sudden experiencing stroke-like symptoms, right? They recognize it, they have the education, and they call 911. So then the EMS people show up, and they come to the person, and they're trying to figure it out. Are you having a stroke? Let's figure it out. They do their own assessment, and they go along their specific workflow. However, if they do verify that they're having a stroke, and they're going to do the next appropriate thing, which is to take them to a designated stroke center, because you need to know what to expect for these type of patients, the entire structure behind it. So the EMS agencies are only gonna take anybody in this area to these big hospitals because those are the designated stroke centers at this point. We wanted to do that. We wanted to take away all that unnecessary time constraint, right? Time wasting, because strokes are very specific to time. So that's the whole essence of why the project is important, is because it's gonna allow us to better serve our community so that if anybody around our area is having a stroke, they can come to the hospital right away and receive the time-appropriate treatment that they need to reverse the symptoms. Does that make sense? Yeah? So that's why this project is important, not only for the hospital, but for you guys, for the community, for the entire, demographic of people that are living in this area. So what do we do to get ready for all of that? Well, we had to basically get everything from administration to the emergency department. We had to do a teleneurology program. We had to ensure the radiology department was working top-notch in specific ways. We had to initiate things with pharmacy, the rehabilitation department. We had to have a really post-stroke strong co-stroke process, which, for example, Soraya is a part of, and we'll talk about that process and what we do to help you guys in that specific way, okay? But in essence, we did all these things. I'm gonna just tell you guys what it means for us to be a primary stroke center and tell you guys the good news that over the last year and a half, we basically got all these things ready. And then we had a survey on March 25th, which is just last month, and we had a very successful survey. They were very impressed with our program, the foundation that we have, behind it. And in reality, we only had 3 findings for the entire program. And she told me herself, she's like, usually when I go and do surveys, especially if it's the initial one, I have 6 to 8 findings. And we have things that we find in the red, which is like their specific matrix. And all of our things were very low acuity, stuff that I already fixed. But because of the process, we have to wait, send the plans of corrections. It's a very structured process. So even though we just did the survey and we had a very successful survey, we don't officially have our letter of awarding us of this primary stroke center status, but we're almost there. And I just wanted to give you guys that update that for this last year and a half, everything we did here came to a very fruitful event, and we are gonna get our primary stroke center designation pretty soon, okay? I'm expecting it within the next 2 months. Within the next 2 months for sure, even less, but I'm just giving you guys an actual time frame. So what do we do? Here's everything that we did. We created a stroke committee. A stroke committee is a platform from where we can create initiatives, ideas, fix problems, and we do that every month, right? We had to hire a stroke medical director. His name is Dr. Trong. He is actually the stroke medical director of Loma Linda University. So the entire Loma Linda Hospital, their entire stroke program is being led by Dr. Trong, and he also is the stroke medical director for our hospital. So we're in a partnership with them. So basically all of the neurologists from Loma Linda are serving our site, okay? So we have a really good quality of neurologists, and they're gonna actually start coming in person as the program develops more. So you guys are gonna have a really good, solid team right here. We have all of the interdisciplinary members of the hospital, all the directors, all of the specific department leaders are part of the stroke program, because if something needs to be done or fixed, we bring them on and we basically tell them this is what we need to do to fix whatever is that we need, right? So number one is we have the structure. We have a really good structure with really good leadership. Part of the entire project was also upgrading our infrastructure. So we basically purchased 2 CT scanners and we have them in the ER. That one's already operational and ready to go. And then we have a second one that is being built in the radiology department for all of the outpatient needs. But that's something we had to do. We had to get this whole machine, put it in there, and upgrade our process so that when somebody's getting scanned, we could do that very quickly. We also included a artificial intelligence layer to all of these little projects in CT, because whenever somebody's having a stroke, we check for 2 things. But I'll tell you guys what that is. But we have a layer of artificial intelligence behind it so that it can alert us to the findings that we're looking for right away. In the future, we're going to have an MRI suite that is attached to the hospital itself so that we just kind of grow in that way as well. All right? For administration, we had to create all these policies and procedures to comply with the Joint Commission. Like I told you guys, we had letters of commitment now. We have an ongoing budget expense for the stroke program for all the things that need to be running smoothly all the time. So the foundation as far as resources is also there. For the emergency department, we have developed specific algorithms for co-stroke activation. So for example, Soraya, when we call a co-strokes, before, the hospital had a process, but it wasn't as well-oiled as it is now. So for example, when she goes to a co-stroke process, she can list to you exactly what are the sequential things that we have to do in order to achieve a fast co-stroke process. So she, for example, plays a part in that. And how do we get there? Well, we had to do a lot of education. We had to discuss these things. We had to go through it. We had to figure it out with multiple trial and errors until we figure out what is the best way for us to run our co-strokes, right? So that's another thing we had to do in the ER. We purchased 2 stroke gurneys that is part of the flow so that we can basically get patients' weight right away so that we can give them that drug that is going to reverse their symptoms. These are some of the algorithms that we developed for the co-stroke activation, for the entire co-stroke process in the hospital, and for our unit secretaries to contact neurology right away and get everything started. These are our stroke gurneys. We have 2 of them, and like I said, they're able to record weight because when somebody's having a stroke, that medication we give them to reverse it is weight-based. And that's, for example, something she does is when we're going through the co-stroke process, she'll ensure that we get the most accurate weight for that patient with this tool, right? Next, we create a teleneurology platform. The platform, like I said, we're working together with Loma Linda University. Their stroke medical director is helping us get this project off of the ground. And we have all of the neurologists basically show up when we need them in this co-stroke process. So for example, when it's time for them to get seen by the neurologist, we have a whole way of bringing a virtual medium for the neurologist to see you right away. This is what it looks like. This is what we came up with. We have 3 separate ones because we wanted to make sure each department had one specific teleneurologist station so that nobody can be, like stealing them, and everybody has their own. But this is our neurology group. This is our stroke medical director. And these are the physicians that are serving our community with their stroke or neurology needs. But again, part of the stroke program was to develop this whole thing, this entire process. Think about how complicated it is to have physicians tuning in virtually with all these processes in the background, right? So that's another part of our primary stroke center is we have all of this in a really good workflow, and it works every time, as long as we have people that care like Soraya that are doing the necessary actions, So we're also now going out there into the community, which is why I'm here again, is to educate our community so they understand what to do when somebody's having a stroke, so they understand what they're getting themselves into if they were to show up in the hospital, and how we're going to help them, right? And this is all necessary because if I show you something that you might not know, right, and it's important and can save your life, you can do the same thing with your friend, It's all about just educating each other and us having the tools, because if this happens, man, it's one of the worst things that can happen to anybody. It's a really hard thing to deal with. I really enjoy taking care of stroke patients because not only can we do something about them, right? Like if they're having the stroke right now, we can reverse it and we can get them back to baseline so they can have a second chance at life, right? But I think that compassion in healthcare is best displayed with these type of patients, man. They're suffering. It's a really bad diagnosis. You can think why. I mean, you're functioning, right? She's standing right there. I'm standing right here. We're having water and we're walking around and all these things. But if all of that is affected one day, right, it can all be taken away. All of a sudden, you can't move one side of your body. You can't speak. You can't think. You can't express yourself. It's one of the hardest things that I've seen happen to people. So that's why I'm, like she said, we really want to go out to the community and at least try and do our best with what we can here, And strokes are a big deal, and that's why we have community events. I've gone to Sun Lakes here. I came here last year. We went to the library. We went to Four Seasons. I'm here again this year, and hopefully this just helps, bring about the awareness of this bad diagnosis. Look, this is me right here with you guys. I was over here. I was here, see? So I'm showing you guys that I do care because I was here last year. I told them I'm going to come back and tell you guys when we finish this whole project. And here we are. So also for ICU and medical, surgical, those are all the units where the stroke patients end up, right? After they gone through the entire process. Well, there we have all of the nurses that are taking care of these patients have specific certifications that are valid to assess any type of stroke-like symptom, right? So they can act right away. So the nursing staff has the education behind them to continue on that process of healthcare with stroke patients. We have an active process of auditing any stroke patient that comes in. That means that any person that is coming through the hospital is gonna be held accountable with all of the quality metrics that we're basically safeguarding the patients for. Does that make sense? So the entire part of being a stroke center is also having these things that we're meeting all the time. And those are all the evidence-based practices that the guidelines, the American Heart Association, the National Institutes of Health, all of these agencies, right, they have all of these rules and set forth guidelines that are ensured to prevent another stroke from happening and things like that. So those are the things that we ensure everybody kind of like has when they come into our hospital. And part of that, like I said, is continuous audit reviews, and we identify any time anything is not performed the way it should be. I act upon that. I talk to the department leader. I identify where this went wrong and how or what we need to do to ensure that doesn't happen again. And that's happening live with all of the stroke patients in our hospital. For radiology, we have a very strong process of getting the studies read right away. So for example, Soraya is gonna have a co-stroke, and then I'm going to pretend I'm the stroke patient, right? So I'm gonna get a co-stroke called. She's gonna come alongside the entire team, and they're gonna start doing a bunch of things. Then Soraya is gonna come with me to CT, and then she's gonna accompany me along with another clinical member so that the patient is always monitored by at least 2 people. Then once we're in the CT table, she is gonna make sure that they have a cardiac monitor so that we're seeing obviously their heart rate and all these things during the process. We scan them once just to ensure that there's no blood in the brain. And like I said, we have a very strong safety layer of artificial intelligence that tells us if somebody's having blood, if they have blood in their skull, or if they have a large enough clot that is called a large vessel occlusion within their vasculature in their brain, which can indicate a potential treatment at another center. So we have all of these processes that are happening pretty much automatically, and the only trigger is us activating a co-stroke, then the whole thing just happens by itself. But that took a long time. That took a lot of work and a lot of dedication, like people like Soraya that are actually doing the entire process. Okay? For pharmacy, we basically develop kits. These kits right here, this is the life-saving drug that we give people when they're coming to the hospital. It's called a thrombolytic. A thrombolytic is a class of drugs that basically activates your own cascading system to dissolve a clot. And that's all a stroke is. It's a little clot in the brain. So if we can dissolve that clot, we can reestablish the blood flow, and then the symptoms go away. It's really miraculous. Have you seen it? Have you seen when somebody recovers from a stroke right away? She's seen it. I've seen it. It's really miraculous. But again, all of the puzzle pieces have to be there before they show up, right, for us to be successful. And what's the most important one? The education of the person to understand that they're having a stroke and to act on that right away. Believe it or not, that is the hardest hump to get over, because people just, they don't think it's a big deal. Like, oh, my foot fell asleep. You know, I'll just wait 2 days and it hasn't gone away. You know, like stuff like this really makes us, you know, feel bad sometimes, because people show up and after it's too late, you know, it's been 2 days, it's been 3 days, sometimes it's like a week, you know, and they don't come to get treatment just because they're lacking the education behind it, right? So that's why these type of events are really important. But anyways, we have a kit, and the kit has everything we need. So if we get to the point of giving the drug, we just pull that up and we're ready to go, right? For laboratory, they show up to the co-stroke, believe it or not. The lab shows up to the co-stroke, they take your blood, and they run it right away so we can have the results within 20 minutes. So it's even faster than what you would do if you were just a regular ER patient. We have a very specific process to ensure you guys get all these things met right away. For rehabilitation, we have a really amazing rehabilitation team led by Uma. Uma is our director. She is so passionate, man, about rehabilitation. She's the right person for the job. She's always looking out to see what we can do better, right? So part of our stroke program is if somebody comes in and it's their first time experiencing these symptoms, whether they came here in time or whether they didn't, we're going to do something to help them. And part of that is assessing their activities, right, of daily living, or how would they be by themselves now that they have these symptoms, right? And we try and help them and basically develop a plan for their rehabilitation, whether it be a home health service that they come and do therapy at their home, Or if they qualify for something called acute rehab, then we basically go to a specific place, we send them over there, and they get really amazing rehabilitation, very intense for a period of time, to try and get them rehabilitated so they can still perform their duties. So that's part of our program as well. For IT, we've done so many things to help me develop tools to audit these charts. We have basically whitelisted Loma Linda domain so that when we have a neurologist that is being called for, and we're going to use this little medium, they just tune in automatically. So I'm trying to reduce as much time as possible from the time a patient comes in through the door to the time that they actually get seen by a neurologist. Okay? So we're almost done with this one. Our numbers, just so you guys get an idea, okay? We have, of the last 4 months of data, well, not the most recent, but those are the ones that we ran the numbers lately, so you guys can have an idea. We had a total of 30 stroke patients. 4 of those went to acute care facilities. That means that their care was too complex for our hospital. But again, part of the process is also identifying that and making sure they go to the right place right away. We also had 19 basically go home. So out of those 30, 19 stayed in our hospital. They had the entire care met within our own 4 walls, and we sent them home with the plan to get better, okay? Some of them went to acute rehab. That is what I just told you guys, meaning that they came in and we assessed that they were qualifying for a specific type of rehabilitation so that obviously they get back to normal. And, some people leave AMA, but we had a total of 17 co-stroke activations, and we gave about 3 of those, we gave the thrombolytic. So that's a 21% treatment rate. It doesn't mean anything, it doesn't mean we're trying to treat people, because we're just saying this is our numbers. This is kind of like what we're working with at the moment. And with our goal to become that receiving facility, that's when we're gonna potentially see more people. And to answer your questions on the second part of the project, because she mentioned it, so the first step was to become a primary stroke center, which I already told you guys, we kind of almost done with that. The next part is to get that certification and go to the EMS agencies and basically let them know that, hey, we have our certification, we have a very strong process, so now we would like to help the community by receiving these patients to our hospital. So it's a separate process, but again, the first step is getting this big project off the ground and actually being certified. And that's it for this presentation. Do you want me to continue on the other one? Yeah? All right. So that's the update on our primary stroke center, which hopefully I did a good job and you guys don't have that many questions, right? But now I want to talk to you guys about the real important things that you guys need to be thinking about all the time, because this is something that I believe we have a lot of power as individuals, is kind of like taking care of our own health, right? I tell everybody the same thing, right? We can make a big difference. We don't have to be so reliant on the system itself, right? We can actually take responsibility and do a lot of things. And for stroke specifically, it's the same thing that we will be doing if you have heart problems, if you have hypertension, if you have diabetes. It's all the same process. It's just being manifested in different ways. For example, somebody that has a heart attack, right? What's happening in their heart is their arteries are kind of getting constricted, right? From the plaque buildup and all these little micro damages over time, right? And then eventually if they get occluded, then they have a heart attack, right? Well, the same process is happening in the brain. And when something gets occluded in the brain, we just call it a stroke. But if you guys see the process, it's the same thing. It's a problem of the vasculature of your arteries that are not healthy, which lead to a lack of oxygen, which leads to all of these problems, whether it be in the heart, whether it be in the brain. So the things that you guys can do to prevent a stroke are all the things you guys can do to prevent all of these chronic diseases that we're dealing with, okay? And that's a lot of them, all right? So what are some of the objectives? Well, we want to make sure you guys identify the different types of strokes. We want to make sure that you describe the warning signs, symptoms of a stroke, identify conditions and habits that may lead to stroke or having this diagnosis in your life, what to do if you're having a stroke, and how to prevent one, okay? So, stroke statistics, 1 out of 19 deaths in the US are related to stroke, right? That's a big deal. And I think it went up to number 4, but based on this data that I have is number 5 amongst all of the comparisons, right? So strokes are among number 5 in the leading cause of death in the United States, right? So it's a big deal. And you guys are able to see this? Well, that is what stroke patients report after having this devastating diagnosis. They report that it's worse than being dead. Why would you think that? Well, think about it. I don't know if you guys have seen somebody that has a stroke or has these long-lasting symptoms, right? Depending on the severity of the stroke, it could be very bad or it can be non-debilitating, right? Just depends. But these type of diagnoses are really bad because they take away the power of the individual to be themselves, right? In many ways. You could just lack the ability to maybe move your right hand, right? And maybe that's not so bad because you can use your left one. But imagine if you just can't use the entire right side of your body. Or imagine that your speech is affected and now you can't even say things. You can't express ideas. You can't formulate thoughts and express who you are to the world. That's horrible. That's like being trapped in your body, right? And I've seen all of these diagnoses and they're really bad. So I want to make sure that I do my best to ensure you guys have these tools, you know? And this is basically what I was talking about, is that we have our healthy brain, but over time, if we don't take care of ourselves, if we let that plaque buildup just kind of happen by itself, right? When the problem shows up, for example, I'm going to use Soraya as an example. She's young and healthy. She's 22, right? If she's smart, she's going to understand that health is the number one thing that we all have, right? What's more important than your health? I know it's not money, right? Because you could have $1 billion, but if you don't have your health, you don't have anything, right? So health is number one priority from my understanding. If I'm not healthy, I can't really enjoy my life, right? So if she's smart, she's going to realize that her health is very important. And if she wants, she can start right now to ensure that she builds all of the healthy habits, right, to secure her health long term, right? But a lot of the times, when we're young like her, we don't really think about these things. We don't. We just kind of go about life and like, I'll just do whatever, you know? I'm not going to sleep well. I'm going to eat all these bad foods. I'm going to go to In-N-Out, get pizzas, blah, blah, blah. So it's during that phase, that all of these damages accumulate. So if she just doesn't care and goes about her life for 20 years, and then she wakes up one day and now she's 42, right? Then if she didn't care, she might have all of these problems, health conditions, right? She might have hypertension. She might have diabetes. She might have all these things. So was it a controllable thing? Definitely it is. The earlier you start to take care of your health, the less problems you're going to have as you get older, right? So it's always something we can do right now, obviously, but it's always best to prevent a disease, right? We don't want to be dealing with the disease at all, right? So our emphasis is on prevention. And that's why I'm here. I'm trying to tell you guys what you need to be doing on a daily basis to ensure you don't get stuck with something like this, right? So the main kind of strokes are the ischemic kinds. That just means that a little clot got stuck somewhere in the brain, right, over all of these years of us neglecting our health, and then eventually it gets clot, and then you have all of the symptoms show up, right? At that point, it's already too late. Obviously, we didn't prevent it, but we still can do something about it with modern medicine, all right? The second kind of stroke is the hemorrhagic kind, which is a subcategory. It's about 20% of the cases, so it's less, But when this happens, it's bad news because it's a high likelihood that, their recovery is going to be very challenging. Why? Because there's blood in the brain. That means that the skull has to be opened up. They have to remove the hematoma. They have to do all these, I would say, crazy things, They're literally going in your brain to try and fix it. So we don't want to get to that point, right? That's why it's important for us to manage our hypertension, because that's what leads to these type of bursts, and then when it happens, it's too late, right? The stroke, the majority of them, we can do something about that, which is that drug that I told you guys that can dissolve the clots, and that's what we do. We basically have a process in place. When somebody shows up, we have an understanding that time is very important. If, for example, we activate a post-stroke, and Soraya goes and does her whole thing, right? If she's good and she understands the process, we're gonna get everything done right away, right? But let's say we didn't have that, and then you guys come, and then we're just lollygagging, we're like, oh, talking about the weekend, this person's having a stroke. We don't know what we're doing, right? Do you think that's gonna go well? No, because every second, look at this, every second that we waste, every minute that we waste, all of these brain cells are dying. So that's why it's really important for us to have a very strong process. This is why we do what we do. This is why she knows exactly what to do the moment the co-stroke is called, because we have to move quickly. And the reason we move quickly is because of these facts. Brain cells are dying very quickly with stroke, okay? So what are some of the signs of a stroke? So in the hospital, we all carry this little badge right here, right? And it just has a very basic message that we try and tell everybody. And it's this one right here. Be fast, okay? This is the education that we want you guys to have, because it's very simple, but at the same time, these are all the tools that you need to recognize that somebody's having a stroke, right? So we're gonna talk about this in detail and what it means, and we also have a lot of educational content over there at the end of this so you guys can grab, and we'll explain to you guys. You guys will be experts at recognizing when somebody's a stroke, trust me. So one of the things that happens with stroke, come here, sorry. So if you guys have a patient, right, and they're coming to the hospital, there's something very specific that you guys need to know with strokes that is different from, let's say, something else, right? The first thing is that when they show up, we're gonna do a neurological assessment. So for example, we're gonna ask them to raise up their hands like this, right? And then if they're having a stroke, for example, this side is gonna start drifting like this, right? That's one thing, for example. Her face might also be droopy, right? And she might have that symptom. So for strokes, it's very individualized. So right here, you have her, and you're looking at that, right? So for example, if she's at home, and all of a sudden, let's focus on B, right? All of a sudden, she loses her balance, All of a sudden, she can't really catch her balance. She's like walking weird, and I don't know what's going on. I can't walk, right? That could be a stroke in the posterior part of the brain, which is the cerebellum, and that can be a stroke symptom. But we don't really necessarily think that a lack of balance could be a stroke symptom. And that's the hard thing that I figured out with stroke, when you couple it up with the next important thing. And the next important thing is that if she's having a stroke and her arm doesn't work and it drops down, right? Guess what? There's no pain associated with it. There's nothing that tells her body, hey, there's a problem, like you gotta go to the hospital. And that's one of the things that I've noticed with strokes, is that because there's no pain associated with it, people don't react right away, right? As opposed to a heart attack, trust me, they show up for a heart attack. You know why? Because they got chest pain. They're like, oh my God, I got some chest pain. I better go to the ER. But we never have that indication for stroke, which is why, again, you guys need to be able to see this, because they're not going to tell you. They're going to be like, hey, I'm having a stroke, man. My whole left side hurts. It doesn't work that way, okay? So another thing we do, for example, is we ask her to smile, and she has a beautiful smile that is even, then that means that she doesn't have a stroke. And that is the F for face. Now, why is it that we look at the face? Because if you guys look at this right here, it tells you focal signs of a stroke. And that means that the symptoms are only going to be in one side of the body. And that is the defining factor that you can be very sure somebody's having a stroke. Because all of a sudden, if she comes in and she's like, hey, my legs are weak, it's been an hour, I can't really move my legs, all of a sudden I can't stand up. Would you say that person is having a stroke? I would say no, because they're weak overall and they're both their legs. Something's going on that they can't really function, right? But if she comes and she's like, hey, I'm weak, but it's only my right leg. I can't move it, I can't feel anything. This one's working fine, but I can't move this one. Then that will be indicative of a stroke. So what I was trying to get you guys to understand is that all of these symptoms that we're going to explaining, this education, is most of the time, if not all of the time, going to be in one side of the body. And that's how you know that the person in front of you is having a stroke, okay? All right, so, just stay there. Other things that we check for is sudden numbness or weakness of the face, arms, and legs, right? One side of the body, because the brain works in that way. The right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, and the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, right? We're also checking for sudden confusion, difficulty speaking, or understanding speech. So she actually was just learning this, but we have two areas in the brain. It's called Wernicke's area and? Yeah, she got it, Broca's area. Okay, I'm quizzing her. So we have two areas. One's responsible for interpreting speech, and the other one's responsible for expressing speech. So all of a sudden, if she comes and she's having a stroke, she might not even have any of the stuff that I just said, but if all of a sudden she's like garbling her words and she doesn't understand like what I'm telling her, and she's just like that could be a stroke symptom, all right? We also check for sudden trouble walking, dizziness, loss of balance or coordination, which is for the B, right, for balance. And we have also checked for sudden trouble seeing in one or both eyes, because that could be a stroke in the visual cortex. And we ensure that if they have a severe headache and no other symptoms, and it's the worst headache of their life, we also make sure we activate a code stroke and ensure that there isn't any blood in the brain, because most of the time, the first symptom of a hemorrhagic stroke is the worst headache of your life, or a headache that just is unbearable. Okay? And that's weird because when you're having a clot in your brain, there's no pain, right? It's just the brain tissue is dying and you just can't function. You can't use your functions. But when you're having a bleed, the first sign is a headache or like a big headache, you know? All right, so hold on. Let me see if I'm going to keep using Soraya as an example. All right, so look, what can we do to prevent a stroke, right? Well, there's modifiable risk factors and there's non-modifiable risk factors. What are the non-modifiable ones? We have age, right? She's 22, so she can do a lot to prepare, right? But if she was 82, then she doesn't necessarily have that whole time to prepare, but she can still do everything right now to either reverse the damage or prevent further damage, right? Okay, so age, we can't control it, but it's just something we all deal with, right? It just keeps coming. Family history, that's another risk factor that we can do nothing about. It's just whatever we are born into, that's it. We have race and gender. Those are all things we cannot control. But look at all the things that you can control. Hypertension, managing your blood pressure, okay? Diabetes, that's all nutrition. Don't be having all this sugar, okay? You have smoking. We already know smoking's bad, and if you're still smoking, it's just another big factor that can lead to a stroke, okay? We have high cholesterol. So if you already have high cholesterol, then they put you on these medications, right, to prevent it getting worse, but that's also something that can be managed through nutrition, right? Physical inactivity and obesity. So these are all lifestyle factors. And believe it or not, if you take care of all these things, if she takes care of addressing the lifestyle factors that prevent us from getting sick, then you're not going to get sick, you know? you're not going to develop these things. It's all up to you. All right, next. So, what are some of the things that your brain does? Well, everything. Your brain controls everything. What you think, what you do, what you're not even aware of, right? So, for example, if Soraya has a right-sided stroke, it might affect her ability to organize information. She might not understand context. She might not recognize faces. And we have that. Remember that stroke we had? I think you were there. This person came in, and she's been married for like 50 years to her husband, and she didn't recognize him. You see, that those are the thing that I'm trying to get you guys to understand is that you really lose the person with a stroke. You lose who that person is because they just cannot do their normal function, right? And that's the worst part, in my opinion. You know, kind of like losing yourself to a disease process, you know. But also, you know, some of the injuries that might express themselves, if they happen to the right side, is you don't have enough attention. You can't keep focused. You have left-sided neglect, meaning that just the things that happen on your left side, you're not really paying attention, right? Like she could be doing stuff over here, and we also have this test that we try and like detect neglect. And like if I'm having a stroke and she's like just moving all this, like, hey, look over here, I'm just gonna be neglecting that side a lot. You can also have loss of big picture thinking, right? And that's just if it happens in one side of the brain. If it happens in the other side of the brain, your left side, which is responsible for things like speaking, reading, writing, listening, logic, all the things that we take for granted that we do every day, right? If the stroke happens on that side, you might have difficulty understanding spoken and written language. Why? Because those areas of the brain that we just talked about are on that side of the body. You might have changes in speech, verbal memory issues, impaired logic, sequencing, and difficulties. So, what is it that we do in a post-stroke process? Well, we're going to walk through it really quickly. So when somebody comes to the hospital, go ahead and have a seat. Somebody comes into the hospital, right? We have everybody be aware of what this is, even our security guards. So when you go into the lobby, right, the first person that you see is a security guard who is going to guide you to check in, register, and see the nurse, right? Well, themselves, the security guards, they have this little name badge, and we give them education because they need to be able to recognize that somebody's having a stroke. And believe it or not, since we started, they've activated 2 co-strokes so far. So they were able to catch the person before they even saw the nurse and then alert the team like, hey, there's something, I think this person's having a stroke, right? So then we go, right, and then we bring the person right away. We have them sit in our triage chair, which is the first place that any patient comes in, right? They get to get registered. And they get seen by the primary nurse or the triage nurse. And this is a really highly trained individual who can recognize all of these things in the triage world, right? Because it's not just about stroke. We have to be able to catch a heart attack. We have to be able to catch any other problem. We have epileptic seizures. I mean, everything, right? So the first person is a very well-versed, experienced nurse that can detect. So then they're going to bring him in, and let's say that the security guard, or it doesn't have to be that way, they could just, at the moment they walked in, the nurse noticed facial droopiness, right? So we are going to assess for these things, right? Be fast. So we do the nurse does a quick be fast assessment. So they'll just be like, hey, what's your name? Blah, 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 blah. Give me all the level of consciousness that you have. And if that's intact, we move forward. We check for speech. We check for facial droopiness. We check their arms for strength and sensation. So we feel across their body to ensure that we catch any deficits. We also ask them to do some things with their legs to make sure we catch if there's weakness, right? Depending on the doctor, we'll test their balance. We'll be checking eye movements and all these neurological components. If the nurse sees that she has a positive BFAST assessment, and then one more piece of information is the last known well time. If the last known well time is less than 24 hours, we go ahead and activate a co-stroke. If it's over 24 hours, we don't activate a co-stroke, and that's because there's nothing we can do at that point, right? Why is it 24 hours? Well, if she comes in and she has a ischemic stroke, which is the one that has the little clot, right? There's 2 windows that we can do something about. The first window is from if her symptoms started at 10 a.m., right? We have 4.5 hours from the moment the symptoms start to give them that drug that I told you guys, okay, the thrombolytic, right? But it's not a simple drug. It's a big process. It's not just as simply as we're just going to give it to you. We have a very, structured way of ruling out that you're a candidate for this drug. But anyways, we can only give you that drug up to 4.5 hours, which is why, again, the time component is really important with stroke. But let's say she came in 6 hours after her last known well time, right? Why are we calling it post-stroke then? The reason is because, how I told you guys about these brand new CT machines, stuff like that? Well, the second thing we do is, as part of the post-stroke process, when she's accompanying the patient, we do 2 scans. The second scan pretty much reads everything in her brain, all the vasculature. We put contrast and we're able to see all of the arteries. And we're able to pick up if they have a clot in those major arteries. If we were able to pick up a clot in her brain, even if it's 6 hours, even if it's 12 hours, right? There's this magical procedure that they call a thrombectomy. And they basically go through your groin, they find your arteries, right? And they go literally all the way up to the brain with an apparatus, and then they pull the clot manually, right? So we can do that up to 24 hours with studies and evidence showing that the patients still have a chance of recovery. So even though we have 2 windows, right, we can help you right away and give the drug and dissolve that clot right away. That's the best case scenario because we're acting right away, right? But even if you don't meet that window, obviously we don't want you to have a large clot that can be pulled, but if there is a clot, we can act upon that. And then since we have these neurology programs with Loma Linda, they have like this rapid process of accepting patients because they're just coming in through a process. They have everything well-oiled. So then we'll send you guys and have this retrieved. So that's why we activate a post-stroke up to 24 hours from a patient showing up. And besides that, the last thing I can tell you guys is you guys kind of like already know everything that you need to be looking out for when somebody's having a stroke. We can discuss this further later if you guys want more education. Like I said, we'll be over there answering all your questions. If you guys want to talk to Soraya can speak to you guys specifically to what we do in a post-stroke process. How is she involved? All the moving parts from the physicians, the technicians, the nurse. And, ultimately, we want to decrease these statistics. And that is because at the end of the day, stroke patients, the majority of them, 50% of them, end up with permanent hemiparesis, so weakness in one side. 30% of them are going to need assistance while walking. 46% of them experience cognitive deficits, and this is for life, okay? A portion of them are going to have aphasia. They're just not going to be able to talk. A bunch of them are going to be dependent on others, meaning that you're not going to be independent anymore. You're going to require somebody to help you. And then sadly, we do have a large portion of the population have to be institutionalized as a result of a severe stroke. That means that their function is so severely affected that they basically have to be bedridden, right? So we're trying to reduce these statistics by going out there in the community and showing you guys what BFAST is, educating you guys how you can pick up if somebody's having a stroke, and letting you guys know what you can do to prevent it. What are some of the things we can do? Regular exercise, balanced diet, smoking cessation, blood pressure management, alcohol consumption, weight management, diabetes management, medication adherence, and regular health checkups. Okay? Is that hard? No, it's really easy. Why? Because I heard you guys like to dance. Somebody told me. So that means that for your exercise, just go dancing. Go dancing 3 times a week, right? Pick something, but you have to start moving your body. Aerobic exercise, low impact activities to promote cardiovascular health without putting strain on the joints. Dancing is a perfect one. What's one that you like to do? She likes running. There you go. Go run, go walk. There's so many things we can do, but it's not hard. It's enjoyable because why wouldn't you want to enjoy your body while it's doing something, right? We want to be able to do those things. And that's actually what sucks is we always kind of reminisce about things that we did in the past, but we can kind of continue if we just stay active. We just do the things, right? We can still retain all of that function. So walking is a great way for you to get exercise, right? Build a little walking team. You know, hey, every day at 6 a.m., I don't know, 7 a.m., you know, if it's too early, we meet over here, and then we're going to do a whole block walk, you know. We can start it like so simply like that, and you start like a walking group. That's how we initiate, right? You can also do swimming. I don't know if you guys have ability to do water activities. That's all good exercise. Dancing, right? I love to dance. I like going out to dance. The one that is the most beneficial in general, I would say, the most bang for your buck, it has to be strength training with focus on proper form and resistance as far as like using resistance, right? Whether it be free weights or bands, that is the best type of exercise we can all do because it basically keeps your musculoskeletal system active, and that helps with preventing falls, with being strong, just enjoying your life in general, right? The aerobic parts are also very important. So if you can combine both aerobic exercise and weight training, that's ideal, okay? All right, so for nutrition, fruits and vegetables. Have a variety of colorful fruits and vegetables in daily meals. They are rich in vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. Whole grains such as whole breads, brown rice, quinoa, oats, high in fiber, essential nutrients help maintain stable blood sugars. You want to prioritize proteins. Include lean protein sources such as poultry, fish, beans, and lentils. Include healthy fats such as nuts, seeds, avocado, and olive oil. And please, whatever you do, if this is too much, I don't think it is, because I'm not saying don't eat. I'm just saying eat more of the good stuff, you guys all know what food we should be eating. We all know, man, because I know we all think about it when we have a nice big pizza in front of us. The first thing we think about is, I shouldn't be eating this, but then we still do it, right? So we just have to act on these natural instincts that we already have and just eat more of the good stuff. And whatever you do, please stay away from this poison right here, sugar. That is one of the worst things that we ever invented. It's the culprit to so many things, so many problems that we have, right? Diabetes, hypertension, all these things. But if you can eliminate sugar completely from your diet, trust me, within a week, within 2 weeks, you'll feel like a brand new, different person. You'll be like, why didn't I do this forever? And that's what I do. I practice what I preach. I don't eat any other stuff. And I just stay healthy. I go to the gym. I exercise. But it's so much better to live that way, you know, as opposed to having all these problems. I'm just investing in my health. I'm going to die of something I know, right? But I'd rather have my health span be as greater as great as I can, you know? Because I know my lifespan is always going to be somewhere it's going to end, but my health span, I can control that. And I can remain as healthy as possible for as long as I can, okay? And that's pretty much it. That was the entire presentation. Thank you to Soraya for coming and helping us. But we'll be taking questions now, and then we'll let you, she can help us? Whatever question you guys have, we can speak to anything, and then we'll be, after this is done, we'll be over there just hanging out. I think you guys have other speakers. I want to be respectful of your time.
Any question? Oh, here we go.
If I have medical coverage at another facility like Kaiser or something like that, would I still remain there for treatment?
So the way it works with private insurance like that, right, like Kaiser. So you have to understand that the most important thing is for you to get evaluated and receive treatment, right? And hospitals understand that. So what we do is all you need to worry about is calling 911, right? 911 is going to show up to your door if you're having these type of services, right? They're going to assess that you're having a stroke, and they're going to automatically take you to the nearest designated center. They don't care if you have Kaiser, because at that time, the most important thing is for you to get through this whole process, meet with us, do the entire code stroke, figure out if you can get this treatment, and give it to you. So you're gonna go to our hospital once we get there, by the way, because remember, that's the second process. And then from there, we're gonna make sure that we give you the treatment that you need at that specific point, and then we figure out insurance afterwards. And we call Kaiser, we're like, hey, we had Mr. Show up, and they had these things happen, we did all this stuff. Do you want us to send them to you guys now that we have given them treatment, or do you want them to stay here? What would you like? And they tell us. I think she.
The Leapfrog survey that you mentioned, is that through the state, the whole country, or Southern California?
So I don't want to speak too much on this because it's not my area. That's dealt with by our patient experience person. Her name is Ann Lee. The way that Leapfrog is, from my understanding, it's a established performance improvement, type of service that I'm not sure if it's being monitored at the level of like the state, California, or nationally. But that's pretty much it. Those scores, right, that are in place for hospitals to ensure we're giving the best services, right? I don't know too much about it. I just know they've been going up, and we are getting better at the entire patient experience for our community. So that's the thing that I would tell you is that although I don't have the specific details of the intricacies of all of that program, what I do know is that our LEAP scores are going up, which all it means as far as the practical information is that our patient experience, right, what it means for a patient to come to the hospital, deal with doctors, talk to staff, go through the process, the length of stay, all of those requirements, right, that are being monitored by that scoring system, they're only getting better and better and better.
Fran, just to let you know, he doesn't know about that. So, but I'm going to tell you, they went from a C to an A.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
So, if you want more information, you should contact San Gregonio.
May I ask one more question?
Sure.
To our president, Bob left.
He's not here.
I was going to ask, we had a trainer here on campus, and do we still have one?
I don't know. And you know what? You need to do that afterwards.
Okay,
We're just trying to focus on this right now.
Since you're not certified as a designated stroke center, if somebody has a stroke and calls 911, can we say, send me to San Gorgonio?
So that's why this is really important, because at the moment, if somebody were having a stroke, right, they are not going to be brought to our hospital because
How do we get to your hospital?
So no. So the way it works is we are operating as a primary stroke center since the moment I started this project a year and a half ago. I showed you guys everything that we do, right? All the stuff that we did. What does that mean? That means that if somebody walks to the hospital, right, we'll be able to do everything. The only population that we don't receive is the people that are calling 911. But we're still serving all of the people that are coming in person to the hospital, that walk in, but also within the hospital itself. If we recognize these things for maybe somebody there is for, I don't know, they're there for something else, they're there for just, I don't know, diabetes management, DKA. And then all of a sudden, if they're having stroke-like symptoms, we can catch it in the hospital right away. So we serve those two populations, walk-ins and inpatient. And with this whole project finalizing, right, we'll have the official letter soon, just certifying us as a primary stroke center. And then with that certification, we take it to the next project towards the end of the year. And then eventually we'll have the last patient population, which is the people that call 911 right away. Hope that answers your question. Was that?
We're only going to take a couple of more questions, and because they're going to be in the back, because I have another presenter coming up.
So my wife had a stroke 4 years ago. Now, what's the chances of her having a repeat stroke?
As far as tax percentages, it's very different for every person. But every time if somebody has a stroke, you're more likely to have a second stroke. For example, if somebody comes in and has a TIA is a warning sign that you will get a stroke because you already have all the damage. However, the body was able to deal with that damage and reverse or get you back to normal. So for example, if somebody's having a TIA, I believe that their chances of getting a stroke go up like about 70% for the next 7 days, right? So that's why we admit them and we monitor them to ensure that they don't have one. But once you get a stroke, you're obviously at a highly, chance to get another one, which is why prevention is the most important thing. Yeah. So your wife needs to do all these things and support her with that. You guys do it together. What's your food? I'll do it. I know. It's just, listen, I understand, guys. It's difficult, man. I know. Food tastes amazing. Go ahead. But it's just what it is.
Just real quick, I just want to be sure I understood this. Did you say that before 911 will take you or us to San Gorgonio, you have to get all these other certifications a year or a little more?
So what we have right now is that we're already operating with all of the tools, all of the infrastructure, right? We had a survey to certify us, right? And that just happened in March 25th. So the entire year and a half of work was validated on March 25th by the Joint Commission surveyors. They were here all day. They looked at the entire program from beginning to end.
Okay,
And
so
those are the things that were...
So in a couple months, when you get this, 911 will take us to San Gorgonio.
Correct. It'll all
Okay.
be seamless. You guys don't have to worry about it. But yeah, so the next step is, and like I said, in a month, 2 months, we finalize this certification. We get an official letter. Then with that, we can embark to have the next step, which is what I told you guys with the EMS. Okay?
Okay, so no more questions. If you want to ask questions, he's going to be in the back, so I will be in the back also. But I've got Ruben Gonzalez. Would you want to come up real quick? And then I've got Nate Smith. Ruben's just going to do a real quick little plug.
Thank you guys for having me. And that was a wonderful presentation, by the way. I think the value of having a stroke center here is going to be amazing for sure. And I know you guys, the team has been working really hard to make it happen. So we've been working with San Gorgonio as well to just start advertising, because a lot of community they don't really know that it's coming and the value that it is. So we appreciate all that you do. If you need help in the exercise department with golf, I can be a part of that. I will go golfing with you anytime you want, because Sun Lakes has an amazing course here. I love it, and I won't tell Tuckwit or any of the other ones this, okay? So don't snitch on me. But I love your guys' course. You guys do very well in keeping the greens clean, and it's all very fantastic. But enough about bragging about how awesome you guys are. I wanted to kind of shed some light on an event. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm the executive director for the Banning Chamber of Commerce. My name is Ruben Gonzalez. I was also a former city council member. Sometimes I tread carefully when I say that. You never know if somebody's like, oh, I know that guy. But it's very important to me, because I was born and raised here in the city of Banning, to make sure that we beautify as much as we can in this city, because I care about this city, and the residents that live here should also care about this city. And so being that I was born and raised here, it's it's an honor for me to be the executive director for the Banning Chamber, because part of what I did about a year ago, I implemented it's an ambassador program, right? And so there's different sectors that I created, and one of them is a beautification sector. And so we have a chairman of the lead ambassador, and we have Fran Hanratty right here. You want to wave your hand real quick? So she has done an amazing job on working on beautifying downtown. Right? That's a big thing that we really want to do, which coincides with what Nate was. Are you going to talk about revitalization today? No, that's a different one. That's something else that he's also getting involved in, is to try to beautify our downtown. So how many of you guys have actually been downtown in Banning? Because I know how beautiful it is on this side. Okay, Sun Lakes is very, very nice, but we really, really wanted to try to focus on downtown because the bone structure is amazing, right? You have the one strip, and it could be potentially one of the most amazing downtowns in this region. Part of that, in the beautification sector for the chamber, we really want to have more murals, more things that would just provide color and light. So with all that being said, we are starting a fundraising event, and it's called Harmony in the Neighborhood, where it's going to be right here in this ballroom next Thursday at 6:30. It's called Harmony in the Neighborhood. It's Broadway meets classical music, and if you like, listening to music, it's a perfect date night opportunity. If you have a couple, if you're single and ready to mingle, which I don't judge at all, you can meet some people there. It's going to be a fun event, and we're raising money. The whole purpose of this is to raise money for that mural. The mural cost about $12,000, right? But here's the good news. Good question. The mural will be in downtown Banning, right across the street. I don't know if you guys know where the digital billboard is in Banning, but there's this huge wall. There's 2 huge walls off the freeway. And the reason why it's going to cost $12,000 is because this is going to be the 4th largest mural in Riverside County. And so this is something that we're proud. We're going to have the congressman's office, the assembly member's office, the senator's office, county supervisor. They all know about it, and they want to be a part of it. And so it's awesome that you guys are willing to let us come over here into the ballroom, utilize the space so that we can have this awesome event that's going to ultimately go towards that mural. So if you guys are even willing to just donate and say, you're like, well, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it on the event, but we want to be part of the cause. That means a lot to us too, because we really want to make sure that we fund this project in totality, so that way it's shared from the community and that we all have skin in the game. So mark your calendars, next Thursday at 6:30, right here in the ballroom. And tickets, you can go on our chamber website. And if you have any questions, you can always contact Fran. She's the one that's heading this up. And that is the event, and we're looking forward to it. So thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. You had a question?
Where will the mural be? She just said.
Yes, so it's a street. I think it's First Street. There's a donut. 6th and Ramsey. It's right. And there's Livingston is the road that coincides with it, with Ramsey. It used to be the Greyhound right there. There's a donut shop. So, yeah, that whole. It's actually right across the street from Help.
Yes, it is.
That's a good. Thank you for that. It's right across the street from there. That is a fantastic idea. Can we get his contact information so he could do that for us? That sounds fun, honestly. I'm always down for a golf tournament. And that does raise a lot of money, by the way. So, any other questions? No? We're all good? Okay, cool. Well, thank you guys for having me today. I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you, Ruben. I appreciate that. Thank you for giving us information. So now our next presenter is Nate Smith from the city of Banning.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nate Smith, the Deputy Director of Public Works and City Engineer for the City of Banning. After that first presentation, I got to go back and rethink my diet, so. Deputy Director of Public Works. So I'm here today as a follow-up. We did a meeting about a year ago here where we talked about the active transportation plan, what we were hoping to do to encourage non-motorized uses within the public spaces and how we can move people around safely. Since that time, we've had a number of other community outreach, and we're at a point now where we have a draft plan that is out for public comment, and we are looking for input from the communities that are going to be impacted by this throughout. So I'm hoping today that we can get through this presentation relatively quickly. If you do want to have a deep dive in it, we did have a planning commission workshop last week. The meeting went on for about 2 hours, and this was the only topic that was at that meeting. So there's a lot of detail that we have in there. I'm going to kind of cater today a little bit to more what's going to impact this side of town while we're talking about just kind of the broad overall goals for the active transportation plan as a whole. If I go too fast through some of these slides, let me know. I can come back. But I do want to kind of get into what it is that this plan is looking to accomplish. All right. We'll move through real quick. So this project was funded by SCAG. This is not a city-funded project at this point. So SCAG, it was us in the city of Linwood that were awarded a grant back in '22 for a planning document. So this is going to be the document that serves as the guidance of what we're going to do moving forward. This is not the document that says this is the project and this is how it's going to be built. So it's kind of like the circulation element. When we're looking ahead, this is what we're going to be looking to build towards. It's not something that I'm going to be able to immediately implement citywide. So we did quite a bit of public outreach, talked about that briefly. We came through here, we brought these boards. We had some handouts in the back. And it was the same type of thing about the types of interventions that we would like to see in the city as ways to effectively promote non-motorized use within our right-of-ways. We got a significant amount of feedback through our advisory group meetings. It's our stakeholder advisory group. We hold 9 of those. Those include agencies, so it was the city, it was the school district, it was Caltrans, it's the fire department. We tried to cast a big net, as far as who was going to be involved with this, so that when we came up to a point where we had recommendations, we don't have someone raising their hand saying, no, you can't do this, right? Run through. You can see here we had a market night event. The areas here, SCAG has a program there. It's called their Kit of Parts. And it's a ways to temporarily set up interventions where the public is able to see them and interact with them a little bit before money is spent anywhere to actually put something permanent onto the ground. This is something that we are going to look to continue to do. Ruben did mention the downtown revitalization as we're looking to move that forward with some of the changes downtown. This is an opportunity, again, to present through this ways of what that might look like. There's a workshop from about a year ago, workshops we had in City Hall. Let's see. So as a result of everything that we went through, the core of the feedback came through is that residents, especially in the northern eastern portions of the town, do not feel safe walking or biking on the streets. There's a lack of sidewalks. There's long straight streets, which typically will have higher speeds. You have cars parked, so you have obstacles that you're trying to move through. And that was a major concern, especially as there's a lot of our education basis is over on the east side of town as well. So students and families are not comfortable having their kids be able to walk or bike to school and are instead relying on parents to drop them off. So some of the data we looked at, the consultants looked citywide at what we have today, our roads, our speeds, where we have sidewalks, where we don't have sidewalks, where the schools are, where the parks are, where we're having accidents, where pedestrian and vehicle fatalities have occurred, where people are trying to go, social equity. We're looking at all these factors as we go through the data sets to take a look at the bike network that we're proposing, where the bike network is in these areas that have been identified with the most need, and then to assign, as part of the grant was 15 priority projects. So, as part of that effort to decide where those projects are and to set up the city to be able to apply for certain grants to get these things implemented. So the data we look at here, we can see where we've got our existing sidewalk network. There's a lot of gaps over here. It's an old part of town. If you look, a lot of it was built almost 100 years ago. And that was just not infrastructure that was put in at that time. Oops, one back. Our existing bike network. We had a project in 2019 that looked to start to put bike lanes in. We have some started on Ramsey. We have some downtown. As new projects come in, especially at the Atwell community and the Rancho San Gorgonio community, when that one does get moving, bike lanes are a part of those projects. So as new builds, they will be adding to the system. And here we can see where some of the data is where we've had collisions and we've had fatalities, either with bicyclists or with pedestrians. So the red dots represent fatalities, the blue dots represent collisions. We can see the corridor of Ramsey is highly represented. Wilson's got a few spots. There's been some notable accidents up there in recent years. Along with this, a previous effort that the city went through with the grant project as well was our local road safety plan. And the number one cause for some of these accidents is drunk driving. Yeah. And for a city that doesn't have nightlife and bars, so the propensity model takes a look at where people are trying to go. The prime destinations that people are going to are downtown, schools, parks. Those are the types of facilities we have here. You can see, again, that's represented with the Ramsey corridor, the San Gorgonio corridor, and the darker areas around the school sites and the parks. So along with the active transportation, goes hand in hand with safe routes to school. So just a real quick look at what we have here as we go through a Safe Routes to School program. There are recommendations for each of the schools. It looks within about a half a mile walk shed. That's about what people are comfortable walking, and that's where you're going to have the highest densities of walkers. And comes up with recommendations that we should be looking at for grant projects at each of these schools to help to promote safety and to promote walking. Each school is detailed in the report. I'm not going to go through them at this point if you would like more details. So when we looked at the city, we tried to figure out, okay, what does this non-vehicular network look like? We've got significant east-west streets that are high speed, with Ramsey, with Wilson. But we do have a lot of interior streets that generally go all the way east-west that do run through neighborhoods. And so while we are looking at bike lanes and continuing bike lanes on a higher speed streets, we can look at Nicollet and Williams as kind of this lower speed, kind of a couplet, if you will. So by modifying that local road, making it more inviting for bicyclists, we can encourage more people in those corridors, which will allow them to travel safer and then be able to transition down to Ramsey to get to wherever their destination is. They run about the same grade. It's all uphill if you're heading west. And they're the same distance from Ramsey itself. So when we add all of the data, the environmental screening, the schools, everything else to that as to develop these projects of what's going to be most grant fundable, we end up with these areas that are hatched as our 15 priority projects. Now those projects are detailed in the report. And so while we don't have any priority projects identified over on this side of town, we still did discuss in the report what interventions and what toolbox that I have that I can go to now. Once this is adopted by City Council, and I can say we are wanting to do a bike lane project, or we're wanting to do a combined bike lane and golf cart project, because a golf cart lane is 8 feet, and a bike lane is preferred at 8 but can be 6. So it's not a stretch at all to say if we do a bike lane project, that we can't just say, we'll just make it an 8-foot combined facility for those two. And Sun Lakes Boulevard and the future extension are designated as these bike routes. So a question that came up last time I was here was, what does that mean for parking on the street? And it essentially means that if we do designate these as bike routes, which is what we're going to head towards, that parking would have to be prohibited on these roadways. Yeah. Yeah, the intent there, they're running, because the narrower the street looks, the slower people go. So we can put lanes in, we can narrow lanes to 11 foot, we can put buffering in there. A lot of cities you'll see the green paint, that kind of stuff, but all these visual things to help to slow people down. Ramsey is this blue line here. I'm sorry, what was that? Oh, again, I can get you a link to it. It has the report, and it's got all that spelled out on there. All right, so this just highlights, again, the 15 priority projects separate from the rest of the bike network. So a lot of it is things that you've seen. You know, it's not going to be necessarily new stuff. It's striping in bike lanes. It's pedestrian signals. You know, you've probably seen in some cases where you have the mid-block where you push a button and the light starts flashing or something like that. You know, looks at traffic calming, looks at recommendations on reducing speed limits, you know, those types of things. But there are a couple of things that we put in this report that they're not new, but they're newish. And one of these is, you know, we could talk quite a bit about, is a neighbor way. So when we're on local roads, you know, typically your local road from curb to curb is about 40 feet in width. That allows for fire to move down the middle, cars to park on either side, and, you know, cars to basically pass with, you know, some caution, right? What a neighbor way does is takes a look and says, what can we do to make those roadways appear and feel like they are smaller than they really are. And you'll see up in this image here, what we end up doing, and we're proposing for a lot of our smaller roads that are on the network, within the neighborhoods where we have residential driveways and so forth, is drawing a solid stripe along the edge of the parking lane, and then we put this dashed line that kind of shows that there's a bike lane towards the middle of the road. Now, drivers are allowed to cross a dashed white line. So the actual roadway, what feels, is not any narrower in this condition than it is otherwise. But if you're driving down that road and you see that dashed line, you see the bike symbols on it, you're more likely to move a little bit closer to the center and be just a little bit more aware and drive a little bit slower. And then when an opposing car does come by, because these are not high traffic areas for bicycles, you're still able to cross into those dashed lines, pass their vehicle, and continue down the road. So it's a visual trick that we're kind of pulling on everybody there to make the road look smaller. I would say. So you guys are private streets, but with this adopted, what we have in here, these are materials that have been approved as part of the MUTCD. That's the guidebook, essentially, that dictates what you're able and can do within the roadways. So, you know, within your HOA, you guys can borrow from this toolbox and apply within your neighborhood if you so desire. Something we hear a lot is wanting to really slow down vehicles. The most common way is speed bumps, but people don't like speed bumps. There are also very difficult to maintain. So in working with the fire department through all this, what we're looking at is these, call them the truck-friendly speed cushions. So they are thick rubber mats, essentially. They're spaced in a way where a fire truck is wide enough that they could drive over it without going on it. But other vehicles would have a bump. The nice part is that they bolt onto the roadway. So if you ever have to maintain your roadway, you unbolt them, repave it, bolt them back down. So you're not rebuilding a speed bump the entire time. So, again, tools that we have in here, you guys can use within your neighborhood. And it's fairly easy to borrow from. And a lot of what the options are paint on the roadway. So it's not a very expensive thing to be able to do some of these things also. So here we can see in more plan view, using Jacinto View Road as the example, as you approach the intersection, the striping reverts back to a more, anticipated or traditional roadway. But as you move down, you stripe in parking lanes on either side. We have the speed cushions in there, and you have the striping for bikes or golf carts. Come on, there we go. Now, no project is fun unless we have something that is a challenge. So what we were looking at is, the propensity of trips shows there's a lot of interest on San Gorgonio Avenue. So we were looking at alternatives there on how do we build San Gorgonio that connects the high school, Central Elementary, and the middle school all in a straight line. How do we build upon that as to make that corridor feel safe and then expand out to have people come to this primary bike lane and then up and down to be able to serve their schools. So what we're looking at here, this is called it's a two-way cycle track. So it is a bike lane, it is about 12 feet wide. It is striped for two directions. And then we have a physical separation between here and the travel lanes. So it provides a safe space for somebody. It provides a visual cue for someone who's learning to ride. You know, don't go into the posts. But it also still allows the roadway to function. So this in and of itself isn't too much of a challenge. This has been acceptable. But if you've driven San Gorgonio around the elementary school and middle school, it's not a very wide road. So what we have looked at as an option over there is actually creating a one-way couplet around the school. So San Gorgonio and Alessandro, between Williams and Wilson, would become one lane, one-way roads. So this is a challenge. You know, generally you see people wanting to move away from one-way roads, you know, because the opposing traffic does have a calming effect as well. It's not often that you see where you have a two-way road that's established that you're now converting to a one-way. We spent a lot of time talking about this. You know, how does it present? How is the community going to feel about it? You know, how do we do something? You know, if we establish this and a year in, it's just, you know, pitchforks and, you know, fire at City Hall. I don't want to have spent a lot of money, you know, to be able to revert it back the other way. So we have, you know, with the cycle track, again, it's primarily paint and it's flex posts. So they glue on, they're about $3 to $5 a piece. You know, so we have a way to do that. And then if the community really does embrace a solution, we can look at enhancing and making items more permanent. So yeah, this is the challenge. I like presenting challenges because I like the discussion that comes with it. Let's see. So here we can see in plan view a little bit as well. So Nicollet Middle School, the fields are up here. That's the gym. And you kind of move down, you know, the parking lot. There's the mortuary and the market. So you can see it's a one-way road. It does allow for drop-off zones. So as parents are waiting for their kids, they're able to get off the roadway as well. We do have those designated drop-off areas. And we can accomplish all of that within the roadway, narrow the crosswalks, you know, so instead of, you know, students and parents crossing two 18-foot lanes of traffic, they're now down to crossing one 12-lane foot of traffic. I'm very curious to see how City Council feels about this. So this is going to City Council in a workshop in June. I forget what the date is. I think it's 11th or 12th or somewhere around there, but it's whatever the first City Council meeting is in June. So there was a lot of discussion about this with Planning Commission. So if you want to get into the weeds, you know, you can watch that video and kind of go through a lot. So that's the overview. I do want to show some of the interventions that we're looking at. So like I said, the document where a lot of the benefit comes from is creating the toolbox. You know, so not every case is going to need the same type of intervention. You know, it's going to vary from case to case, and for need from who the users are. You know, there's a different need here than there is at Central Elementary. But the toolbox goes through and starts setting up how we can look at multi-use paths, bicycle lanes, bicycle routes, you know, here we have how you can have a golf cart and bicycle in the same lane. You know, we head into, you know, recommendations on how they should be marked, how intersections could be made to be safer if you have a bike lane separate from your pedestrian lane, what interventions that are potential there. Then we kind of go through and again look at your bicycle infrastructure, traffic calming techniques. There we have the whole discussion on speed limit recommendations as we move through. So what we want to get to is a point where I have this, And then when a community or a neighborhood or anybody comes through and says, we've got a problem and we'd like you to fix it, the first thing that I'm going to look for is this one person in the neighborhood, everybody else hates it, or is there community support? So, we're looking at a process right now to kind of start what that framework looks like, so that as a group of neighbors comes together and says, this intersection is a problem, and I've got neighbors on all sides that are supportive of this, that I can have with more confidence that we can put in a project that is not going to be protested if we have a community buy-in at an early stage. It also allows that as we look through this and we identify what the bike network is and traffic calming measures, that as development projects happen, we can condition them to do the same thing and to implement this to meet the goals that are be part of the ATP. So that is my very brief overview of what the document is. I'll answer any questions very quickly, but I will say that the document is on the city webpage. It's under Public Works Engineering, and there's a tab right there for it.
I have a question. That one that you have for the bike lane and the golf carts together, when the extension goes through, if we're able to have something like that, would that be feasible to do that on both sides?
Yes, it would. It would be very feasible to do it. And a lot of what we would look to do, and when we're going to put this in, is when we go through and we slurry streets. Ideally, I'd like to be able, especially our main roads, slurry them every 5 years. Okay. So that wipes out all the markings. So it gives me a fresh slate to work with to start to implement these things. Bicycle lanes are planned as part of the roadway extension.
Okay, so then my next question is, you said there would be no parking along that. Does that mean all the way down?
All the way down.
So that means that none of the trucks that were coming here would be able to be on those, if the warehouses went in, that means that none of them would be able to park on the streets.
Nope, there would be a parking prohibition on Sun Lakes and the extension in its entirety.
Oh, like that. Okay, very good.
Well, the city council has already approved me putting bike lanes on the extension, and within the, as part of what the cross section was when we started the project. There's no room for parking on that section of the roadway. On this side here, the city council, if they adopt this and they take in the rest of Sun Lakes as part of the bike network, which I don't expect opposition to, right? When we restripe it, it would be the same thing. There would not be the opportunity to meet the 2 traffic lanes and a bike lane plus parking. There's just not room.
That's really a great thing for us, for Sun Lakes, because that would help not having any parking of the big trucks on that street. So, and then would there be speed bumps? Would there be any kind of, because if trucks happen to go through there, or you have speeders going down there, Sun Lakes Boulevard, would there be any kind of speed bumps? Would there be anything there to prevent people just racing using that as a racetrack?
Generally not speed bumps. That is something that we are moving away from, but potentially with those cushions could be implemented.
Okay.
Or we have the pedestrian crossings that are lit. We are looking as part of the extension project initially. The project on its own, without anything else happening around it, right, is not anticipated to generate a huge amount of traffic.
Okay.
So we are looking at flashing stop signs,
Okay.
To kind of help to bring awareness that the intersections really exist.
Okay.
As projects come through, if the delay at the intersections is warranted by greater traffic, then traffic signals would have to go in, or pedestrian crossings, or some other way to break up the raceway.
And that would be determined once Sunset Crossroads project was started?
So any land project, especially a major land project, they would be required to do a traffic study.
Okay.
And with that study, they would go through and say, here's the intersections that we're looking at, here's the delay that exists now, here's the delay we expect with the project, here's the delay we expect at build out. Okay. So, right now for the extension project that we're looking at, in its opening day, there is not a significantly longer delay at the intersections. But the traffic study does also look and say, okay, 30 years down the road, if everything builds as what the land uses are currently, and were to build out, what would those delays be? And we see that 30 years down the road that there would be delay there. So, with that, I can go back and say, okay, now it's open. We can study it. Does it meet warrants? And if it does now, when we have a project, we can start. If we don't know, we can put on a capital project and look at it at such a time that the land development intensity increases, traffic increases, and we have a project that we can do.
I see. Okay. I'm sorry that I monopolized. Anybody else have a question? No.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate
Nate.
comments.
I'm sorry that it was late getting
Oh,
you
no
up
worries.
here, but
No worries.
I know you had to rush through this, but thank you. So I want to thank everybody that is still here and everybody that is watching on Channel 97. And I just want to let you know that our next meeting is going to be on June 4th. And Opportunity Village is going to be here. Jeffrey Platt, who is a homeless services director, he's going to be doing a homeless service presentation, and he's going to be bringing some of his success people here. So you're not going to want to miss that. I mean, it's really going to be very educational for everybody. So I encourage everybody to come, and I thank everybody for staying and listening to the presentations. Thank you.